determinations. They left it out. So they got caught. So then immediately the other side's like, oh no, that was just a mistake, and it doesn't ignore the fact that in Honolulu they say it's warming, and well, here in America they're saying it's warming. You know, I don't know that. But when you cast doubt, when you give reason to cast doubt on your work, how much do you believe anything you say? You see what I'm saying? That's what happens. So I'm sure many people would be on board with the idea of climate change. First of all, using global warming was stupid. That's a bad name to give it, like global cooling. But climate change is very real. And yes, some of it may be anthropogenic. Having said that, whether you can prove it or not, common sense would tell you that when you're spewing out gallons and gallons of, hundreds of thousands of gallons of methane into the air, something's gonna happen. Okay? But then when you can take the statistical route and say, well, one volcano could basically be, 20 times what you would put out in a year or something like that. You could use that kind of argument. But that doesn't mean we should do it, right? So you can have those real ethical discussions. But as far as the science goes, you gotta be honest. You gotta say, look, this data doesn't support it, but this data overwhelmingly supports it. And so statistically, we find overall it supports it for this reason. You don't lie about it. Okay? Otherwise, it blows your reputation and your credibility. So, when I say science by its very nature is never settled, keep in mind, I don't know if you ever heard the name Descartes, René Descartes. He was a mathematician and a philosopher. And he said, this scientific theory you guys are coming up with is bogus. Anybody can make a hypothesis, then tweak their data to prove the hypothesis and make themselves the big shot. What they should be charged with is doing everything they can to disprove the hypothesis. And at the end of it, if the hypothesis is still standing, then you got something. So basically, his concept, even though is accepted, what his plan is accepted, there's a lot of people who sometimes, human nature get the best of them and they ignore it. But when you're doing the scientific theory, if you do a double-blind study, you don't know whether the data will support your hypothesis or contradict your hypothesis. You only find that out. And as far as science being never settled, do you know we have universal laws of nature? Like energy cannot be created nor destroyed, which I should have said. We're even questioning that. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Right? Scientists basically, essentially, for some reason, they came to the impression that if they believe in evolution, and they had a big debate about it, by the way, several years ago, nationwide debate. Time Life magazine covered it. And one of the people who represents one side says, well, evolution is a babbling stream, a brook. It flows, it ebbs, depending on what its environment is. Another guy says, well, I don't know what evolution is. I really don't. I know it exists. I see the data. It could be God's work. He says, I believe in God. So if you don't, I don't care. The point is, how do I know that this isn't the tool of God himself or herself? Okay. The point is, how do I know that? I don't. So who do you think said what? One was an attorney, one was a scientist. Who do you think said that evolution is happening just, spontaneously, based on the environment?
Good old Albert?
What's that?
I said good old Albert.
Albert Einstein?
Yeah.
Well, Albert Einstein, actually, he has an interesting story to him. But that was the attorney. Okay? The physician, or the scientist, said, I don't know what evolution is. And how do I know it's not the tool that God uses to make it happen? I just don't have any data on it. Okay? This wasn't just any ordinary guy. This guy was the head of the Human Genome Project. So the point being that you're in good hands. Whatever you believe, but when it comes down to facts, you gotta follow the scientific method. And speaking of energy, of course, where are we getting our energy from ultimately? The sun, okay? What'd you say?
Our food.
Our food, right. Well, ultimately, we're getting it from the sun. The sun, I like pocket watches, so I always relate things to pocket watches whenever I can. You know what a pocket watch is? It's like an old time watch, you know, heavy, and you wind it up. So I would tell people, how do you relate the sun to this pocket watch? You know, the pocket movement of the ticking of the pocket watch. Well, the sun gives energy to the plants. The plants make basically your starch. Starch is eaten by the animals. We eat the plants. We also eat the animals that ate the plants. And then we get their fuel. From them we get the fuel. We do our metabolism. We make our currency of energy, which is a chemical called ATP, which we'll talk about later. And we use that energy to power our fingers, to turn the spring, the mainspring on this wind-up watch. The mainspring then starts to loosen up and spins around a whole series of gears until ultimately you get down to the last gear that has a little stone on it. The stone hits a little pallet. It's like there's jewels on it, so they don't wear out. And the pallet will move back and forth as the final turn comes up, and that's where you do the ticking point. The point, you're not making up a watch, but the point is you can relate the sun all the way down to a ticking watch. I don't care what it is. If it requires energy, ultimately it's coming from the sun. Okay? That's why it's so critical. Should there be a global cloud that takes away our sun rays, you know, for a day or so, it could be pretty bad and noticeable, but for a month, it would be devastating, okay? Does that make sense? Or for a couple of years, you might see major swaths of the world gone.
So how do they get their protein from like places that don't have a whole lot of sunlight, like Antarctica?
How do you get protein from a whole lot of sunlight? What?
I mean, like we get sunlight here, but I'm saying like
Right.
in Antarctica,
Uh-huh.
they don't have a whole lot of sunlight.
Yeah, you
So
don't have a
that
whole lot of
protein-
life either.
Huh?
You don't have a whole lot of life either.
Uh,
When you go to the Antarctic, look at your population. You're right. There's a lot of limitations that you have. You have to adapt to that environment. So when you go to some parts of the world where you have 30 days of night, or you have 10 days of sunlight, there are changes, or even 30 days of sunlight. Like in Denmark, the sun comes down at 10 o'clock to the horizon, then rises back up again, certain times of the year. So when you're up that north or that south, you're gonna have those changes. Then you're gonna have to deal with those. Okay? So you'd have to either import stuff in, okay, or the natural environment would be very restricted and unique that can still handle the amount of sunlight and vegetation that is available.
It's kind of a weird question, but how come days don't like gradually get longer the further you go south or north, like towards those extremes?
Say again, Deb?
How come days, like, they're always 24 hours, and then you go to places where they're like 30 days, why don't they like gradually get longer?
Well, remember, time is man-made,
Yeah.
the way we use it. So if we wanted to do it that way, we could. We kind of do that with daylight saving time, don't we? We sort of extend our days, although there's a move to stop that because it's too confusing. But not everybody does daylight saving time, you know that, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody in the country does daylight saving time. We happen to be one of them that does. But yeah, to answer your question, remember, it has to do with a 24-hour is just a rotation of the Earth. Rotation's not gonna change whether you're up here or down there. It's still gonna rotate. But to the extent it does change, you can use, some kind of a little adjustment, which is what we call the savings time.
Oh, no.
All right. Now, health is all about, very quickly, it's all about, actually I'll put something up here. But health is all about, the overall, situation of the individual, an inventory. What is your overall condition, okay? Are you free of disease, or are you dealing with something? You know, chiropractors, I taught 4.5 years in chiropractic school, and my chiropractic colleagues, they always have a play on words, because our bodies have something very unique that we've come up with called homeostasis. Have you heard of homeostasis? It just means keeping things the same. We know things are gonna always move, always change, but that doesn't mean we gotta leave them that way. If your body heated up because it's hot outside, and then you don't cool it down, pretty soon you're gonna fry. You're gonna be the temperature of the outside, okay? Or if you cooled it down and you didn't stay hot inside and revved up your metabolism to get hot, you'd freeze. Look at me, yeah.
Is homostasis the same as homeostasis?
It's not homostasis, it's homeostasis.
Oh, it's homeostasis.
But to be sure, the word homo and homeo in this case stand for the same thing. Yeah, but homo was also used for homo sapiens, so maybe that's why Walter Cannon, who's the one who coined this term, basically said, you know, the internal environment of a cell is always gonna change. So he did the work of another guy called Bernard, which you don't have to worry about that. But Bernard says, the internal environment has to be kept sacred. If it changes, you're in trouble. And Walter Cannon says, yeah, but what do? The vastness of the universe versus the cell. Cell's not gonna make it unless there are mechanisms that are constantly putting us back to the way we were. And that's called homeostasis. So when you have homeostasis, everything is around a homeostatic normal. The temperature rises a little, it falls a little. Your blood pressure goes up a little, it comes down a little. Your heart rate goes up a little, it comes down a little. Your respiration rate goes up a little, it comes down a little. It's all happening throughout the day. Okay? That's homeostasis. But if you show evidence that you cannot maintain homeostasis, then you are not in a state of living at ease anymore. You are in a state of dis-ease, get it? You're in a state of disease. So when you talk about health, health is all about assessing whether you're in a state of wellness, a state of health, 100%, or is there a state of illness? Are you basically at ease, or are you in a state of dis-ease? And if you are not 100% in a state of ease, what percentage would you say is in a state of ease? So, how's your health? Oh, that's an excellent. How's your health? Oh, great, wonderful. That means you don't identify or recognize anything that's wrong.
Oh, no, that was my next question. What
Okay.
would be, yeah.
Now, when you say wellness, wellness is a little bit more kind of, I don't want to say frou-frou because it's not. It's more philosophical, one lay person, intertwined with